Hey everybody, it's May from Black Mountain Faith, and today I need to do my Bible reading for, I believe it was day 11. It is Genesis chapter 35 through 37, so just stay tuned. Okay guys, I have been gone, but I have still been working, even though I have not been putting my notes in my Bible. There is something I'm up to, and that is in the next video, okay? But before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that even though I have not been on the channel, I am still intending to read my Bible from Genesis all the way through Revelation. Now, I had told everyone to start it was 358 days for the Bible reading plan. And I've gotten so many people that say they're falling behind. They feel stressed out because they're not catching up. And this is the Bible, friends. It's not going anywhere. And you don't have to read as many chapters a day as that Bible reading plan says. In fact, let's just say that that's a good reference to watch some of the videos, read the additional articles and things like that with the Bible Project and Bible.com. I personally am just going to be coming on here 3 to 4 times a week, not daily. I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on myself. And I do have something in the works to help those that have fallen behind from where I'm at in chapter 35, if you've not gotten there yet. For those that have gotten further ahead, I'm catching up. Do not worry. So I just wanted to let y'all know that it's not going to be a daily Bible reading. It's going to be 3 to 4 videos a week. And I will show you the notes that I take and the things that I write in my Bible. So, let's go ahead and get into chapter 35, shall we? Now, I have filmed this video many, many times. I have another phone coming just so that I can film on the one I'm doing, and that's the only thing. There'll be no, internet, no nothing on it, just no service, just a filming phone. So, when we finished up last, we see that Jacob's sons, Simon and Levi, they destroy that town after their sister Dinah was defiled, okay? And I'll link the video here up above in case you didn't see that. So it says God blesses and renames Jacob. That's where we start for chapter 35 in Genesis. And he tells Jacob to, it says, God said to Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there. Make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. So Jacob takes his household and to all who were with him. Jacob said to his household and all that were with him, put away your foreign gods that are among you and purify yourselves and change your garments. Now this is pretty pivotal, I think, because as I wrote over here, God calls Jacob back to Bethel, where he was supposed to have gone anyway, and he didn't. And Jacob's family only got right with God after Jacob did himself, okay? So this is an important step literally and spiritually to be cleaned up and in their best frame of mind to become before the Lord that they had neglected. This tells us that all through this story so far with Jacob, his people are carrying around idols. And we all know that later when we get the 10 Commandments, you're not to have any gods before him. Okay? So I just thought that was pretty interesting that we're learning about Jacob. And we find out here that his people and his family are carrying around idols. So as they journeyed, a terror from God fell upon the cities that were around them, so they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So God protects them from the cities that are around them because of what their sons had done, here. And when he comes to Bethel, Jacob does build the altar because God had shown himself to Jacob when he had fled from Esau. And this is what God had told him to do in the very first sentence here in chapter 35. It says, arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there. Make an altar there to the God who appeared before you when you fled from your brother Esau. So Jacob, he's getting himself together. He's now truly becoming committed, and he's doing everything that God commands him, and he does make that altar, and that is where he had fled from Esau. And during this time when they're traveling, it's pretty interesting because they put, and Deborah, Rebecca's nurse, died, and she was buried under an oak below Bethel. So he called its name Allon Bakuth. Now, down here, Allon Bakuth, when I read into the study notes of this Bible, it says the oak of weeping. So that's why he had named it Allon Bakuth. All right, so we go over here, and it says, after he does that, so God appeared to Jacob again when he came to Padaram and blessed him. And God said to him, your name is Jacob. No longer shall you be called Jacob, but Israel should be your name. Remember, when we saw him back here wrestling with God, God had renamed him Jacob. But I guess people are not calling him Jacob. But God does have a tendency in the Old Testament to constantly reaffirm his commandments and to restate things that he has already said, mostly for the importance of the fact that God's word is important. So, but Israel should be your name. So he called his name Israel, and God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your own body. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac I will give to you, and I will give the land to your offspring after you. So God goes up from him, and Jacob sets up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, and a pillar of stone. He pours out a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. So Jacob called the place where God had spoken with him Bethel. So I put over here, God appears to Jacob again and reaffirms his covenant with him. Once God leaves from him, Jacob sets up a pillar and gives a drink offering of oil and calls it Bethel, where God had spoken with him. His name is Israel from now on instead of Jacob. And it's basically, this passage here in 35 is signifying Jacob's commitment, or Israel's commitment, to his relationship with God. The next part of chapter 35 is the deaths of Rachel and Isaac. So a lot of tragedy is going to happen to Israel's family. When they had journeyed from Bethel, when they were still some distance from Ephraim, and down here it says it's about 2 hours distance. So Rachel went into labor, and she had hard labor. And when her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, do not fear, for you have another son. And as her soul was departing, for she was dying, she called his name Ben-Oni. But his father called him Benjamin. And Ben-Oni down here could mean son of my sorrow or son of my strength. But Benjamin means son of the right hand. So, where was I at? So Rachel died, and she was buried on the way to Ephraim, that is Bethlehem. That's kind of interesting because we're going to learn all about Bethlehem in the New Testament. And Jacob set a pillar over her tomb. It is the pillar of Rachel's tomb, which is there to this day. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. While Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Alright, so I put over here, Rachel dies in childbirth with Benjamin. Jacob mourns her loss and erects a memorial when they arrive in the land beyond the Tower of Eder. Reuben sleeps with Bilhah, Jacob's concubine. This incident reveals internal conflict within the family. That foreshadows the future of struggles to come among his sons. Now, when I was doing some commentary, some said that Reuben lost his birthright over this incident, but I don't see that said here in the Bible, so I didn't put it in my notes. Okay, so if anybody was wondering why, that's pretty much why. It goes on to list the sons of Jacob and all 12 of his sons. And it says, and Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, or Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years old, and Isaac breathed his last, and he died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Over here I wrote, Isaac dies at the age of 180 years old, and Jacob and Esau come together to bury him in the cave of Machpelah. And the reason I said that is because we know that that is the tomb of the patriarchs. Okay? So, a lot of people had sent me messages about chapter 36 in Genesis, and they were like, it's so hard to get through it. It is. It's a lot of complicated names that we're repeating, but there is importance in these genealogies. Like I said, they're all trying to lead up to the birth of Jesus to show how everyone has descended from the beginning of time all the way up to the time of Jesus. But basically, instead of reading out all the names that I'm going to butcher, because we know I will, the first thing I do want to let y'all know is that then Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all the members of his household, his livestock, all his beasts, and all his property that he had acquired in the land of Canaan. He went into a land far away from his brother Jacob, for their possessions were too great for them to dwell together. The land of their sojournings could not support them because of their livestock. In other words, there was not enough land, there was not enough vegetation, not enough water for not only all the people in the possessions, but as well as all of these animals that they had. So Esau settled in the hill country of Seir. And Esau, as we remember from back here in our previous notes, that I had to pause the video last time, but here it is. Born red all over, sold his birthright for red lentil stew. Edomites, region known for the red sandstone formations. So it says in here, Esau is Edom. It means red. Okay, every time we see the word Edom, we know it's referring to Esau and his descendants and to Esau directly. So it goes into great detail here. And these are the notes that I put for all this in chapter 36 about the genealogy. The first thing I wrote was, chapter 36 opens with a listing of Esau's wives. Due to growing possessions between Esau and Jacob, Esau relocates to Mount Seir. There Esau establishes his family. This chapter meticulously lists his sons and grandsons, each with their own tribal affiliations, contributing to the Edomite nation. So as we're reading about all of these descendants from Esau and all the sons, the grandsons, we're finding how they are forming up all of the Edomite nation. And additionally, this chapter lists the descendants of the Horites, the inhabitants of the land before the Edomites are mentioned. Okay, this chapter then concludes with a list of Edomite kings who ruled before the establishment of the Israelite monarchy. So, as I was reading this, I was like, okay, well, how is this, like, super important? And I came up with 3 main reasons why all of these genealogies here are important to us for us to know. It's basically given us the lineage and identity, okay? The ancestry of the Edomites, highlighting their descent from Esau. We need to know who all came from Esau and where they went. The separation and parallel development of these people showcases the separate development of the Edomites alongside the Israelites. Okay, so these people being noted here in chapter 36 are not part of the Israelite nation. They are part of the Edomites, which is just the people under Esau, okay? And it emphasizes the diverging paths taken by Jacob and Esau's descendants. So the Israelites are going to go in one direction and the Edomites are going to go into another. And it's also about land and power. On this part of the page, it talks about the different kings. And after this king died, who became king and remember, they're all descendants from Esau. So under land and power, I wrote the establishment of Edom and Mount Seir, and the list of Edomite kings suggests themes of land acquisition and the rise of a powerful nation, because the Edomites do become a very powerful nation. So I figured that, I know lineages tend to make people like, let's just skip that chapter. But there is importance in every single word written in the Bible, so I wanted to give it its due diligence and to make my notes accordingly. So that is what I have put for chapter 36. So now we're going to get into one of my favorite people in the Bible, which is Joseph. I have a tendency to gravitate to anyone who goes to Egypt. I'm a big historical buff. I like to watch documentaries, and especially anything with ancient civilizations, including Egypt. So Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. So that's where we know that Jacob has finally settled down, and that's where he is at now. He is in the land of Canaan. So Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. And he was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report to their father. So Joseph was a little bit of a tattletale. He goes back and tells on these little boys and says, whatever it was, because we don't give the whole backstory here. But it does give us some foreshadowing here. It says, now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all their brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. So they're just going to be really mean and belligerent. So far, the notes I put over here was chapter 37 explores the destructive power of favoritism and the resulting jealousy it breeds within families. And we all know this is very, very true. And so when Joseph is given the colorful coat, his brothers hated him because they knew their father loved him more. Okay, so now here it says, now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brother said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream. Gets better, right? And he told it to his brothers and said, behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept the saying in mind. In other words, he tells Joseph, Israel and his brothers, that the sun and the moon, father and his mother, 11 stars, all of his brothers, are going to bow down to him. Now, he's already basically told his brothers the same thing with the sheaves bowing. And they're upset about it. They're like, you're not going to rule over us, especially because he's the youngest, except for, little Benjamin, who was born to Rebecca before she died. Was it Rebecca? Did I say that wrong? It's Rachel. Rachel before she passed. So Joseph's like, Israel goes, I know you're not saying that me and your mother and your brothers, you're going to rule over all of us. And then, of course, his brothers have the same reaction. They're just, totally ticked off about it. But even after Israel says that to his son, he keeps it in mind. He's like, because his dad is not ignorant. He's spoken with God. He knows that these types of things have power. And he knows that all things will lead back to God. So he does keep this in mind. So I wrote, Joseph recounts 2 dreams to his brothers, and it angers them. Joseph's dreams foreshadow his future prominence and his destiny. The dreams depict Joseph's future dominance over his brothers. Okay, so we end in chapter 37 with something super horrible. And the first time I had heard it in Sunday school when I was a small child, I couldn't believe that brothers would be this mean and this cruel, even in the Bible. And as we were doing our notes earlier in the other chapter, where the defiling of Dinah comes up, we find out what his brothers Simon and Levi do to this town and to these people. And these are the brothers of Joseph. It kind of made sense that, yes, these brothers were more than capable of committing this kind of treachery and just benevolence to their own brother. And so Joseph is basically going to send his son. Joseph is sent by his dad off to, find out how his brothers are doing because they're shepherds, right? And so it says, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. So Joseph goes and he does what his father asked. And so he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Please tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from far, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him." I'm sorry, that cat was here again. "That he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, or Gilad, I don't know how you say it, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our own hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took him to Egypt. And down here it says that 20 shekels of silver is equivalent to about 11 grams of silver. Not even a pound. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in his blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol for my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. So this was like, wow, this is a horrible story, that his brothers would do this to him. So these are the notes that I took. When Joseph is sent by his father to check on his brothers, they see an opportunity to get rid of him. They feel they are far enough away from Shechem and the land of Dothan to not be found out by their father. In other words, they're not where their father thought they were, where he had told them to be. They're even further away. So how is he possibly going to find out if what we do to him ourselves is what actually happened, or if it's what we say to him that happens? So all the brothers except Reuben plotted to kill Joseph and throw him, which is his body, into a pit and tell their father that a wild animal had eaten him. But Reuben convinces them not to kill Joseph. So instead, after throwing him in the pit alive, the brothers sell Joseph to passing Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and I did write 11 ounces. Reuben is afraid of what they have done and decided to dip Joseph's coat in blood to tell their father that Joseph was dead and they had found his robe. The brothers' actions highlight the devastating consequences of betrayal and deception. Joseph, despite his innocence, is forced to endure suffering at the hands of his own brothers. This is just absolutely horrible, but I don't know if y'all know, but the story is really awesome. I like how Joseph gets his brothers in the end, because we know Joseph did not die. So it's really sad that Jacob is thinking that his son is dead. It's horrible that his brothers have sold him into slavery, knowing especially what would happen to him. But that is where chapter 37 leaves off. So I'm going to leave it here, and I'll be back in a day or two to show you the rest. We got 3 more readings to get through. I have kind of pre-decorated. Yes, there are stickers for these, but There is also something else I will show you in the next video. I'll give you just a little bit of a taste of what I've been doing. This is kind of what I've been up to, and every time I seem to want to film day 11 especially, it seems like I keep losing the footage. So now that it's filmed and I haven't dropped it and I can actually get it posted for you guys today, I'll be able to go ahead and write all the notes in for the rest of Genesis that I've done. I think I figured out the settings on my phone. And so yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, and y'all have a nice day. Bye!